Everybody is asking, when is the Russia and Ukraine war going to end? Well, this is a very difficult question to answer. This war can last for the next 10 years or 20 years. Are you aware that currently Russia can defeat Ukraine in less than a week if they want to? Let's make some analysis here. Currently, BBC, Al Jazeera, CNN, Sky, DW, everybody is reporting that Ukraine is completely outgunned on the battlefield. This is an open fact. So Russia have every opportunity to win against Ukraine currently, but they are not doing that. What I've realized is when Ukraine run out of weapons, the Russians slow down. When they give them weapons, they start again. That is what Russia is currently doing on the battlefield. Russia is targeting Western economies, not Ukraine. You see, the longer this war goes on, the more the Western economies deteriorate. So Russia is actually playing some technical games here. Everybody can cross-check. Before this war began, February 2022, Germany and France had the biggest economies in Europe. Russia has taken over. The Russian economy is currently the biggest economy in Europe currently. So if you are Vladimir Putin, I don't think you will want to end this war now. Nobody fights war of attrition better than the Russians. And the Russians are fully aware that America is very poor when it comes to war of attrition. America has never won any war of attrition after Second World War. Name me a single country America defeated in war of attrition after Second World War. Just one country. So Americans are poor when it comes to war of attrition. So the Russians are playing a game here. And at the end of the day, I am 100% confident that the Russians are going to emerge victorious. Russia is not going to run out of weapons. Ignore the nonsense that some people are saying. That is not just going to happen. The Russian military-industrial complex ran 24 hours with 3 shifts. So it is totally impossible for these guys to, run out of weapons. Russia is selling weapons to other countries. Don't forget about the Wagner group in Africa here. The Russians supply them with weapons. So if there's no enough weapons for Russia, do you think they'll be giving weapons out to different countries? Just think about it. They are not going to run out of weapons. If you remember this, please type it down in the comment section. You see, last 2 years, I told you guys countless number of times that America and the West will run out of weapons. Russia is not going to run out of weapons. Because if you look at the West and America military-industrial complex, it belongs to individuals. These guys are capitalists. It belongs to individuals. So they only operate if you give them contract. When you compare that to the Russians, they don't do that. The Russian military-industrial complex belongs to the state. So they produce weapons ahead, right? For example, if the Russians want to assemble T-90 tank, they can assemble them over 100 in a month. Because they already have the spare parts. So in times of war, what they do is they just assemble. That is what they do. The Russians promised themselves that they will never allow what the Nazis did to them in Second World War to happen again. So the Russians produce a lot of weapons ahead of time. So it is totally impossible for the Russians to run out of weapons. So the West, they keep talking about North Korea. North Korea supply Russia weapons. North Korea supply Russia weapons. These guys who are struggling to survive, how can they, support Russia? How many weapons can North Korea give to Russia? What makes North Korea dangerous is their nuclear weapons. Yes, they have weapons, but not in large quantity. They can meet the demands of the Russians. What the North Koreans are actually doing is they are testing their weapons on the battlefield. Over the years, they've produced weapons, but they've never tested it in real combat before. Everybody is doing the same thing. The West is also doing the same thing. Over the years, they've produced a lot of high-tech weapons, but they've never tested them in real combat before. So they are all taking advantage of, the ongoing war, and they are testing their weapons on the battlefield. Currently, you have NATO officers on the battlefield who are taking records of how their weapons are performing. And that is exactly what North Korea is also doing, right? Russia became the first country to use laser weapon in real combat. Russia became the first country to use hypersonic missile in real combat. So they are all testing their weapons. That is what is happening. North Koreans are struggling to even survive when it comes to food. And you are here telling me that North Korea is supplying Russia with all the weapons. North Korea cannot meet even quarter of the Russians' demand. Ukraine has not yet gotten to even the main defense lines of the Russians. Yes, the Russians have 3 defense lines. The first one is meant to be broken because it's not heavily fortified. The second one to the same thing before they get to the main defense lines of the Russians. And Ukraine has failed to, penetrate through even the first defense line, which is not heavily fortified. So how are they going to win against Russia if they can't even break through the first defense lines of the Russians? Patrick Lancaster was right. 2 years ago, I quoted Patrick Lancaster on this platform. According to Patrick Lancaster, who is an American journalist, who is in the front line, the Russians gave their main defense lines to private company to build these fortifications. So they really fortified the main defense line with concrete. Yes. So it will be very difficult for Ukraine to penetrate through the main defense line. Even if NATO get involved, they can't. We all know that NATO is involved, but they've not yet declared war on Russia, and they are not also fighting on full scale. Well, let's wait and see what happens next. Interesting time ahead.